Welcome everybody to episode 153 of the Startup Show. Today I'm visiting the offices of Proxeus and I'm talking to the co-founder Antoine, and we talk about blockchain and Proxeus, but we also talk about their 25 million Swiss francs ICO. And last but not least, we talk about why you should start being an entrepreneur with shifting your mindset. Make sure to stay tuned for the whole episode. Welcome to episode 153 of the Startup Show. Today we're here in Zurich and I'm at the offices of Proxeus with the co-founder of it. Welcome, Anton, to the show.
Thanks, Cedric.
It's a great pleasure to have you. I'm really excited to have you because, as I said, usually we have a lot of blockchain companies that want to be on the show, and it's always very hard to differentiate between the ones that we actually feature and the ones not. But before we go more into what Proxeus does, Anton, as usual on the Startup Show, everybody gets about a minute and a half to introduce themselves.
Thanks. So, Antoine Verdon, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been living in Zurich for the past 10 years. Founded several companies. The first one in 2008 was Sandbox, a global network of entrepreneurs, which I co-founded with other entrepreneurs here in Zurich. Mm-hmm. We spread all around the world to create a global network of about 1,500 members. Then that led me to work for our main investor, Fintech Fund. I was leading the seed stage Fintech Fund for a couple of years, which brought me again to work in blockchain because blockchain was one of the topics that were relevant for fintech at the time. And I started Proxeus. The idea emerged about 3 years ago, and we prepared the whole project so that we were able to do an ICO in February 2018.
One of the things that I was told that is very special about you is you're savvy about legal tech, everything that is around legal. So maybe you can explain to us why you founded this club, the Swiss Legal Tech Association, and what do you guys do there?
True. The first idea of Proxeus before it became Proxeus was to automate legal documents and processes. And in that context, we had several ideas which direction it could take. When we applied this blockchain layer that made it become Proxeus, it was very clear. But before, we thought that we may be able to target customers like law firms or corporate lawyers. So in that context, it was very relevant for me to exchange ideas with people from the legal field. So I created the Swiss Legal Tech Association to bring together lawyers who wanted to think about how to rethink their services and also how automated contracts could work in the future.
And then another thing you founded, which is not the focus for this interview, but it's about Block Factory. What do you guys do there in one sentence?
So Block Factory is a blockchain development company.
Yeah.
We work for different clients. Proxeus is currently our main client. We do the whole technology development and we work also for other clients, and we incubate a series of blockchain projects.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about Proxeus because again, we mentioned it so many times already in just the first 2 minutes of this interview. And maybe give my audience a short pitch about Proxeus.
So Proxeus came from a big idea we had 3 years ago when we started thinking about how the blockchain ecosystem was evolving and what was missing. And we realized, in comparison to, for example, the internet, where it's very easy to today develop anything you want, there is a clear stack and there are tools. Whenever we saw people developing blockchain applications, we realized that everyone was really starting from scratch. Mm-hmm. And they had always the same problems to solve. They were almost reinventing the wheel every time. So the goal of Proxeus is to bring the same approach that WordPress brought to the internet and to offer to any developer a set of tools that they can use to create the blockchain applications more easily. Mm-hmm. So we have tools, for example, for registering information, anchoring it in the blockchain, storing information. That's all things that would be hard to crack if you would be confronted to it for the first time. But with Proxeus, you can take those solutions off the shelves and customize them to create your own decentralized applications.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know WordPress from content management. What is, let's say, applications for Proxeus?
Applications for Proxeus are quite diverse. We've seen, we did a lot of proof of concept last year. We had proof of concept done together with the University of Basel, for example, where we developed a framework to certify academic diploma on blockchain. We had another proof of concept done with Canton of Zug and IBM and Swisscom, which consisted of digitizing the Swiss company register. Currently, Switzerland is at rank 56 when it comes to the efficiency of creating a company in the world, according to the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
And we made it possible using blockchain to reduce the time to incorporate a company from currently 10 days, according to that ranking, to 1 hour, 37 minutes.
Okay. That's very efficient. One of the questions that I was asked by several people who we reached out to ask about you is about the legal setup of Proxeus. Mainly because there's a lot of buzz about whether you should do a foundation, a company. How did you solve that problem?
Yeah, we had a long discussion at the beginning of the project regarding the legal setup, where we should be based and what form it should take. We decided to base Proxeus in Liechtenstein because at the time there was no clear legal frame in Switzerland to create an ICO. We actually realized afterwards we would have fulfilled all the requirements of Switzerland. We did it in Vaduz, Liechtenstein, and we incorporated an Anstalt, which is a legal form which is specific to Liechtenstein, which is a sort of mix between a foundation, so it has an independent board, independent from us, and a private company.
And what you did last year was your ICO, over 25 million Swiss francs. How was that for you? Can you elaborate? Because there's so much buzz now. It flattened down a little bit about talking about ICOs. But how was that experience for you?
It all went very fast. We started preparing the ICO last summer in 2017. We wrote the Proxeus white paper. We had first contact with first possible buyers, people who were interested in the project. We split the project in two parts. There was a pre-sale, 10 million, which we sold in November, and the main sale, which was sold to the public in February. I think for me it was a really great experience because it allowed us to be in touch with the community, exchange a lot of ideas much faster than what we would have otherwise with people who could use the product, try to get a feel of how this community would like the project to be set up. So it was very much of a community effort.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what I saw online, I think was about 2 hours. Is this true for the public sale, or what was the benchmark?
We sold all tokens in 48 hours.
48 hours. Yeah. That's pretty quick, I assume.
It was, yeah. It was,
to raise so much money. One of the questions, whenever there is an ICO, is the product. What is the delivery? What is the timeline of the product?
The product will look like a suite of standards and building blocks that you will be able to take and combine or use separately to solve some of the issues you have when you develop blockchain applications. Whenever you develop something new, you are confronted with this question, for example, of which data should be public on the chain, which data should stay private. So we have, for example, a solution for that. We allow you to anchor some data on the chain to have a clear timestamp while storing data encrypted in a facility of your choice. You have the issue also to verify information which has been created. We also have a module for that. A bit like you can see WordPress today with the base, which we call the Proxeus core. It's going to be a code available on GitHub, open source, on which you will be able to add a series of modules to customize your application, and a custom front end to make it look like what you want, and be able to build in and connect all the data sources or functionalities that you require.
What do you think, what's the timeline? When will that be ready?
So currently we built about 70% of the product we aim to deliver. We're working really hard on getting that out in the first version open source to the community. We already got, without opening the code yet, 2 betas out. One to show how we register workflows and documents. That was the first beta which went out, I think, in May 2018. In September, we published another beta called Samba, which is an application allowing you to register your documents in the local storage provider of your choice while anchoring the key data on the blockchain. It's the base for many applications. May it be simply data storage for any application, or as well, it goes very much into the direction of these self-sovereign identities, this idea that you have your like you have your wallet today with a series of documents, your academic credentials, your ID, your passport, your act of origin, and depending where you go, you have to show some of those credentials to obtain a free pass. So if you go to the cinema, you show your student card because then you can get a discount. If you want a new passport, then you have to show your proof of birth and so on and so forth. So it's another tool we release in the beta version so far.
Now, when you reflect on the ICO, when you started in summer 2017, what were the biggest challenges when you look back of the
There are many, yeah, because summer 2017, there were many ICOs in Switzerland internationally, but the legal frame was very fuzzy. Switzerland didn't have a clear guideline on ICOs. They published it for the first time in February 17. I guess the main difficulty was navigating the frame and trying to understand what is an ICO. Is it like fundraising for a startup, or is it like a crowdfunding project? That's the approach we took. We said it's like crowdfunding for something, for paying upfront for a product and a utility that we will deliver to the community later. And then there was the whole question of how to structure it, in which country, with which type of legal structure, how to qualify the token, what functions to give it to. So it was very much like navigating in a whole new world and trying to find some references and defining the path as we were going.
Yes. I mean, like when you look at the term blockchain, again, I think there's still a big buzz around it. Maybe we moved away from Bitcoin and crypto ICO versus blockchain. Where do you see, let's say, the biggest challenges when you explain to people what blockchain is?
I think the biggest challenge right now is to have people understand what blockchain is, because everyone is talking about blockchain, but I feel most people have only a very superficial understanding of what blockchain is and what it will bring. No one has a very clear vision right now. It's a history in the making, right? The concept of decentralization, which are hard to get into the heads of people and make them understand that blockchain is not just about making the digitization better, but it's going to be about connecting proprietary systems to one another. I think that's, for me, the biggest thing that blockchain will change. The whole digitization wave allowed to digitize processes within companies, and now with blockchain it's like another layer of digitization which allows all those proprietary systems to be connected to one another and to digitize a whole ecosystems. It's really a mindset shift to understand where it will go. It's quite interesting because now blockchain, I think, is at the same stage as, like, remember when we started using the internet and the pictures were downloading like this. It's pretty much the same, and there's many people have been focusing on blockchain infrastructure so far, like how to build blockchain, and now we're starting to talk about the blockchain stack, because on top of this infrastructure, it's also our approach with Proxeus. We think there will be middlewares helping customers use the blockchain infrastructure, and that the blockchain infrastructure in per se at the end will not really matter. Just like whenever you send an email via Outlook today on your desktop, whether the email is sent via the POP3 or SMTP network or IPv4, it doesn't really matter at the end for the end customer. I think on top of this basic infrastructure, you'll have a lot of layers, and that blockchain will be at the end one piece that you will be able to take as a developer in your stack to create applications. I don't think either that blockchain will replace entirely digitization, but it's going to be one tool that you'll have to, for some information that needs to be anchored and verified, that you will be able to add to your applications.
When you look at whatever you said, and what do you still think is missing in the market for the adoption? I mean, again, you mentioned, like the early times of internet, and I think it took, let's say, 20, 30 years for the adaptation, but blockchain goes much faster. I mean, 2-3 years ago, no one spoke about it. Now every corporate is like all into blockchain. What do you say is the next few years look like? Or let's say months. I'm sorry, because it's such a fast-moving world. So
I'm not sure it's so fast-moving for corporates. I mean, they all start thinking about blockchain, trying to understand blockchain, but in fact, they are doing POCs. They are giving a little bit of budget to understand where it's going. There are a couple of companies that are further, but most are going step by step. I think the real thing will be there will be new companies with new decentralized approaches that will take over some parts of the market, like we've seen like with the GAFA in the internet. I mean, there are whole new companies arriving and taking over or killing some of the other companies. And we see the first signs of that now when we observe the crypto market. I mean, EOS, new blockchain, raised 4 billion in 1 year. If you would compare it to IPOs, it would be the third largest IPO in the world in 2018. But it's an ICO and no one really was talking about it, but it's a huge thing. And same with Binance. They announced 1 year after their creation that they reached the 1 billion milestone, not as valuation like the traditional unicorn companies, but they made 1 billion profit after 1 year of operation.
Wow.
And it's just a whole new dimension. And I fear if the traditional players don't adapt fast, they will be overtaken by some of the new players.
I want to look a little bit more into Switzerland as a crypto nation. I mean, like the Bundesrat, the Federal Council, as well as the FINMA, they all make a lot of efforts to be part of the game, at least. How do you see Switzerland being positioned on a global scale?
I think Switzerland was very lucky at the beginning in 2014 to have the Ethereum team come here and incorporate Ethereum there, do an ICO, and they trained the whole ecosystem to understand what blockchain was. And then you had lawyers, auditors, accountants, and so on that could work with blockchain companies. And the ecosystem started to grow. But if we're not more active now, we're going to lose this advantage if we haven't lost it already. Because there are countries like Singapore or Dubai or cities like London which are very aggressive into getting that talent. And they're doing two things better than what we do here in Switzerland. The first is they are more aggressive in positioning blockchain as a key technology. In Switzerland, we say we are a blockchain nation, but how does it concretize? There are a couple of guidelines from FINMA, and there are a couple of initiatives, but at the end, Dubai, for example, said every minister in Dubai should have 2 initiatives in their own field until 2020. So that's a very concrete thing. And in Switzerland, I told you about this prototype we created for the commercial register, compressing the time to create a company from 10 days to 1 hour, 37 minutes. But now the budget to roll it out will be relatively small, but I don't see anyone ready to invest into something like this right now. The other thing that other countries do better is in terms of immigration. It's very difficult in Switzerland to get the right talent to work here, and especially for things like blockchain where you need to get global talent to work for your project. It's very hard to recruit people outside the EU circle. We have here, for example, a smart contract programmer from Taiwan, and she studied here at ETH Zurich, but she would have been sent away if we hadn't made an offer and spent 4 months going back and forth with the authorities trying to justify her stay. Yeah, it's quite difficult. I mean, if in blockchain nation you can't hire the right talent whenever you see them fit, it's going to be difficult for Switzerland to settle its case.
So do you think, like long term, what do we have to do? Adjust the regulations?
Yeah, I think softer regulations around immigration would be one, but that's going to be a difficult one. I don't think our parliament or our population is ready for that, even for key sectors of the society. I think it's about creating a clear vision how Switzerland should benefit from blockchain at all levels, government, companies, and developing the ecosystem into that direction.
What do you see, like when you now look a little bit more like just into Switzerland? How is it with the ecosystem here?
There's quite a big ecosystem of blockchain projects here. We have about 500 projects incorporated in Crypto Valley, as far as I've seen. Maybe half are actively working from Switzerland with their team. There's a big network of investors, actors in different fields around legal, tax, accounting, who can support the ecosystem. So it's certainly a good base to be in. But I haven't seen many big projects coming to Switzerland recently, and I think that's the best indicator. We should focus on trying to get a couple of really key players work from here with their operational teams and their talent from Zug or Zurich.
And what do you say about the quality of projects, let's say excluding Proxeus?
There are some really good projects, also very true to the decentralized aspects of blockchain. There were some really good pioneers here. If If you think of the first big ICOs, many of them happened here, and I think you have the traces of some really good pioneers in the space. But more and more people now are going to Berlin for at least the blockchain core infrastructure projects. Many of them have their teams based there. And Singapore is also very attractive as a hub right now.
What inspired you for entrepreneurship?
It wasn't really a conscious decision.
Yes.
I just started working on stuff, and since I was 16, I was organizing parties, and then it grew into becoming companies, and that's actually how we started this first project. Sandbox was in 2008 was an idea. We didn't know which form it would take, but we knew we wanted to do it, and it took the form of a private company at the end, which led me to other things. But I think, like most things in life, it's about like the energy and the drive to go into a certain direction, and then things follow.
Do you have a story of how you turned a failure into a learning experience?
In 30 seconds.
I'll give you 40.
The Proxeus one is a good story. I mean, we were a bit struggling with our business model, our ideas around this first project we had in the legal space. We saw a lot of interest from lawyers and corporate legal departments to use this workflow and document engine we had created. At the same time, we were quite unsure about the business model. We didn't find the right partners, and we were kind of stuck talking about, should we stop the project? And at the end, we thought about the project differently by adding this blockchain layer, realized that we could give birth to a real ecosystem, and that was the start of the Proxeus ICO. For me, that was a big learning into making a small change that can make you look differently on things.
Mm-hmm. What is success in life for you?
I think success for me is about doing things that make me happy and fulfilled. If I can wake up in the morning and have the feeling that my life has meaning, or that I don't wonder why I'm doing stuff, for me that's success. Spending time with people I like, I can learn from, I value, and having a life that resonates with the different things I see and the people I meet.
What is your biggest fear?
The fear of failing. I mean, you never know what's going to come, and you always think that after the next step it's going to be easier. But actually, every step you go forward, sometimes the more complexity gets added. And in my case, yes, we fundraised a large amount. Yes, we have an amazing team. Yes, we made progress on the product. But now, how can we move forward and make sure the project is a success? How can we make sure that the ecosystem takes birth? There's a whole lot of questions.
What's your most memorable startup moment?
The moments I can think of were moments where being in a startup would put you in a position that you wouldn't be able to reach otherwise. I remember my times at Sandbox where I was totally broke. I was paying myself a really mini salary that would barely allow me to work in Zurich, but sometimes I would go to international conferences and be on the same panel as the CEO of a 100,000 people company talking about stuff, And I think for me, it's like entrepreneurship is really a list of ups and downs, like a roller coaster, where at some point you're like named one of the most influential person in some space, and you go to a conference where you have a huge success. At some point, you don't have any more money in the company, then you're able to fundraise. It's always like this, but it's
a roller coaster.
Yeah. I hear a lot of time people who say, oh, I would love to be an entrepreneur. I would love to change my career because the current one doesn't make sense to me. But I'm just not yet sure exactly of the idea I want to develop. And I'm waiting for that. And I think that's the worst thing you can do. I think being an entrepreneur is a decision. It's about mindset. And it's about deciding one day that you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to start something. Mm-hmm. And in none of the projects I've done, I've found this perfect idea at first. I mean, the perfect idea comes from deciding something and then being obsessed with it and talking to every single person in the day about it and refining the idea or changing perspectives completely. And then you're going to find a problem and a business model and something to solve. I don't think that's by waiting and working a couple of hours during the weekend on an idea and waiting for it to be perfect that it will bring you anywhere. So if I had one advice, it's just to give it a try and start.
Now, one follow-up question. When you say just start, for you and me, it's obvious what it means, but what does it mean practically speaking?
For me, start is about, for a certain period of time, being able to focus 100% on developing one idea, to be able to focus solely on that and kind of make it your life. And in order to start something and be successful, you really need to be obsessed with it. And from the first hour, you wake up to the last one, with your friends, colleagues, family, contacts, talk only about that until you cracked the nut and understood how to get into that.
Okay, very good. Okay, Antoine, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody who is out there and watched all the way till the end. Make sure to stay a few more seconds so you'll see who is up next Monday, and I'll see you there. Have a great week.
Hi everybody, my name is Tommy Meyer. I'm the Senior Country Managing Director of Accenture in Switzerland. We will be talking about Accenture, about consulting, the future of work, digitalization. Tune in and join us.